moving on, and so what I saw yesterday when Chebukati was making this announcement was someone who was finally emphatic, you know, perhaps because he was at the end, and I remember he said, this is my last election to preside over. So in that sense, almost, you know, handing over and saying, this is it, you know, it's like going out in a blaze of glory. This is not the same Chebukati we've been seeing all week. Okay. He's been appearing very subdued. He's been appearing like he was under siege. Yesterday, he was at the finish line and saying, I've done my duty. This is the president. I will sign the certificate.
Whoever
very
takes
emphatic.
over from me, we've done everything that we can to put the whole process together.
Yes, exactly. But moving on to the tone of the president-elect, he said two things which I found very interesting. The first one, and I quote, I will work with the opposition to the extent that they provide oversight to my administration. For me, I felt that was great news. Because my interpretation of that, and I could be wrong, my interpretation of that statement is that there will be no handshake. To the extent, he drew a line in the sand. I will work with you up to over here, to the extent you provide oversight to my administration. That tells me there will be no handshake.
Later he said, in his last campaign rally, he said, I'm willing to have tea.
Yes, correct.
Having tea and doing handshakes, I think, having tea.
And he distinguished that.
But he distinguished that very, very clearly.
Having tea, we can have tea because we are gossiping, we can have tea because we catch up. Tea in itself, and I think I've done a study on this, tea in itself is an interesting sight. It doesn't necessarily mean there'll be a handshake. I am hoping there will be no handshake, to be completely honest with you.
He said there'll be none. Yeah.
Because I feel a handshake is an avenue to creating very lazy and entitled politicians. All I have to do is sit down. I'm not in the opposition. I just sit here. If you want me to pass a bill, you know, we are all in power. We are not all in power.
Right.
And I think from the tone, it was a very conciliatory tone, but it was also an emphatic tone.
He was drawing the line.
He was drawing the line in the sand, in my view. And I could be wrong, of course, I stand corrected. And he says, to the extent they provide oversight, which means I am hoping actually for a robust opposition. We've not had an opposition in the Jubilee, you know, in the Jubilee administration. I feel the politicians who were meant to be in opposition were not in opposition. They felt they were in power, and they therefore became extremely lazy. If you look at the record of even legislation of this parliament that is outgoing, it's pathetic. Some of the bills, like the ICT bill they were passing through, you would ask a politician, have you read this bill? Have you really go? And they would say, you know what, you know, yeah, very lazy, very laissez-faire. They were just sitting there, passing very toxic laws, not even reading and doing the work, because everybody felt they were in power. And everybody felt that, therefore, if we have access to power, then it means we have access to money, we have access to wealth, and we don't have to do the work. And this is the thing with politicians, I feel, especially in this house we are going into, because there's no CDF. And therefore, the legislative agenda becomes the key work that these people are supposed to do. We need an opposition. We need people, and I'm on record as saying this, we need strong whips in the house. We need strong committees. We don't need people sitting in the Public Accounts Committee, sitting and doing nothing. Budgets are passing, and we are asking, what exactly is going on here? Nobody has a clue, because we are all in power. We will tutapitisha tu hizi vitu. We want an opposition. We want oversight. And I'm hoping that that means that there will be no overtures, political overtures to, and of course, I think I'm being super optimistic. You know, everybody has told me you're not being realistic. I hope that also means that there'll be no overtures to draw some of these stray parties, because I feel Azimio will disintegrate back to its parties, ODM, Wiper, and all. I feel I don't want there to be overtures to bring these Wiper people, you know, let's talk to these independents or these people and have them. We need a strong opposition in parliament. Another thing he said is, I will build upon what I and President Kenyatta started. For me, that was also a very curious statement. I feel, you know, rubbishing the gains of the Jubilee government, of which Ruto was part of. DP Ruto, now President-elect Ruto, was part of. some of the gains...
But he did acknowledge working with his boss, Uhuru Kenyatta, for 10 years.
For 10 years, yes.
And to build on the foundations that he laid.
And that's a very different tone from what had been there before, distancing themselves completely from Uhuru. So that, for me, meant that we might not necessarily see a lot of radical, changes, which is what maybe people are expecting. There will be, I feel this president is going to be very hands-on. This is not a president who's going to be on autopilot. This is a president who is going to be, has a strong work ethic, hard-working. And I think we will see that. But expecting there to be extremely radical change from what had been started by the Jubilee. I mean, he said it, I will build upon what I and President Kenyatta started.
Yeah. Before I get into the newspaper, because I saw Prof shake his head when Caroline spoke of overtures and these the parties.
He's very pessimistic. He believes I'm living in utopia.
Jumping Prof, don't the amendments to the Political Parties Act, were they not meant to cure that?
Yes, I think definitely the amendment to the Political Parties Act and even taking us forward to starting to build coalitions and what they mean and how you can jump from one party to another. A whole lot of institutions and institutional frameworks have been put in place to guard our democracy. But we know from the last 5 years that the politicians have a way of making that entire system so malleable that you can't recognize it anymore. It's quite possible, and we've seen that, it's quite possible for somebody to be running on another party while officially still on on a separate party. It's been quite possible. I mean, we saw this mongoloid situation that again enabled lack of oversight to government, where it was not clear who was in government and who wasn't. You'd ask people that, I mean, why aren't you doing your roles as the opposition? They'll tell you, there's nothing like the opposition. We only have minority and majority. So that minority and majority can decide to work on government. And there you go with, death of oversight, despite the fact that the Constitution is very clear about how all these, institutions are actually meant to work. We know they've actually been captured before, and as Caroline has said very, very well, we have had this situation where we've really not had an opposition. Yes, the president-elect mentioned an opposition and mentioned oversight, but I was told that there's nothing like opposition in Kenya. We just have minority and majority. And this minority and majority, more often than not, conspire against Kenyans and conspire against how these particular institutions were actually meant to work. Yeah, so again, when it comes to, and it's the same politicians who find routes of subverting the very good intentions, both of our constitution and legislation. What I actually hope is that in the next dispensation, we should actually have fidelity to the institution, so that Parliament can actually play its correct role and is not necessarily captured by the executive. The majority and minority parties should actually play the correct role, and this adulteration of institutions go all the way. I mean, those things of CDF. CDF is an executive thing, really. I mean, what are legislators actually doing with that? Some of the people who are opposed to BBI were saying, yeah, this institution that you are creating to oversight the judiciary, where is it? You're starting to create these opaque areas or areas of blurriness between our institutions and so on. And I think if the president-elect is keen on having fidelity to the institutions and ensuring that our governance architecture works the way it was envisaged in the Constitution, I think that will actually be a very good and positive thing. And he's been emphasizing this from his campaigns. In fact, he distinguished the tea from handshake. So he said there will not be any handshake, but there will be tea with the outgoing Prime Minister.